Good morning, children of the Most High. This is your brother Chukwemeka with the Igbo Hebrews. Sons and daughters of God, today we want to talk about the return to Omenani. If you remember, in the first video I did this year, I enjoined the brothers and sisters to return to the ways of our fathers, return to our tradition, because you cannot borrow what you already have. We cannot be borrowing a religion. We have a religion already. We cannot be borrowing culture and tradition. We already have one. For those of you who feel that our culture and tradition and religion is a cake, you have the responsibility to make it better. You have the responsibility to modernize it. It's like taking your children to an amusement park and you see other people's children, they are well dressed and everything, and you begin to say, okay, I will abandon my children to go and follow those children. That makes no sense. We have our tradition, we have our culture, we have the things that we do that people used to know us. Ihe Jirimalai. That is our tradition, our Omenani. If we lose that, we lose our identity. We will literally be floating in space. So we have to go back to our tradition. And when I did the video about going back to tradition, I noticed that it's very ambiguous for a lot of people, because most people, when you tell them to go back to tradition, to Igbo tradition, they don't really understand the starting point, so that they don't really understand what it entails. Some people would think it's okay, go back to worshiping idols, or maybe go back to living in the village, or living in mud houses, which of course there's nothing wrong with it. But today I feel it's important that we have series of videos to explain how one can live the Igbo customs and tradition even in the modern era. Okay, let's start. First of all, we will begin with the Bible. And the reason I start with the Bible is this. In fact, let me take a few seconds to explain my stand for those who may not understand it. You see, this is my core belief. The Igbo tradition is the same thing as what the Europeans call Hebrew tradition. The Bible was written by the Europeans about the Igbo tradition, that's the Hebrew tradition. They encountered the records of our forefathers when we used to live in the Middle East, and they wrote the Bible from the documents they could find, and they used it to create a religion called Christianity. They saw the Hebrew tradition, which is the Old Testament Bible. That is the Igbo tradition. That is what I believe, and that is what I represent in this channel. The Bible is made up of a written record of our tradition. So in a sense, we Igbos, we are lucky. We are lucky in that our God, using those who destroyed us, at the same time also saved our records, so that it will enable us to come back to Him through those records that they have been saved. That's why I said the Igbo people need to understand that even though the Europeans brought the Bible does not talk about the Europeans, it talk about them. And there's overwhelming evidence. I mean, just go through some of the videos in my channel. There's overwhelming evidence that the Bible is talking about us. So we should use the Bible to come back to Omenani. If we follow the Bible, if we actually follow the Bible, I'm talking about the Old Testament Bible, not the New Testament, because the New Testament Bible was written much later, and it was used to create a false religion that they call Christianity. But the Old Testament Bible is actually the Igbo tradition. If you, and brothers and sisters, I can assure you this, if you follow what the Old Testament Bible say, A to Z, you will see yourself doing Omenani, doing the Igbo tradition. You don't even need to go to the village to find out how something is done. If you follow it and follow it specifically, follow it to the letter, scientifically researched, you will see yourself doing Igbo tradition. I guarantee you that. So that's, I just want to explain that for those who may not understand it properly. So for us to go into the Bible, into the Omenani, return to Omenani, let me use the Bible. Most Igbos go to church. Majority of Igbos go to church. They read the Bible every day. But the confusion is that they confuse New Testament and Old Testament. They call all of them Bible. New Testament is not supposed to be a Bible. It is a crafted thing. It's just a book. It's a bunch of letters which were not even addressed to you. I mean, your name is not Philemon, for heaven's sake. But let's not discuss the Old and New Testament now. Let's start from the Bible. First of all, the Igbo tradition, there's a name for it. The Igbo culture and tradition, it has a name. It is called Omenani. Those of you who understand the Igbo language, Omenani means what we do on the land. What is done on the land. That's what Omenani means. What is being done on the land. In some places and in some instances, they call it Ordinani. Ordinani means what exists in the land. Okay? That is what the Igbo culture is. Omenani, what is done in the land. Let's go to the Bible, brothers and sisters. In the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 6, let's see what the Most High told us. Let's see what our God, Chukwu Abiyama, let's see what He told us. Okay, those of you who read Bible every day, you probably don't see this, but let's look at it again. Deuteronomy chapter 6, He said, now these are the commandments God commanded to teach you, that you might do them in the land where you go to possess it. Again, this is the commandment, the statutes and the judgment which the Lord your God commanded you that you must do in the land. This is why we call our tradition Omenani, things we do in the land. That is not a coincidence, children of God. The Omenani we have, it's a law. The Igbo traditions you see today, these are laws. The laws are not written in a cake book called the Constitution. It is written in our hearts. Every Igbo man that is deviating from it will be feeling the impact in their conscience. These are laws. It's not written. We have it known to us. It has been passed down from our God to our ancestors and to us. These are laws. This is the basis of the name Omenani, which means what is done in the land. You can see it in Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 1. Okay. Now, what does it mean, coming back to Omenani? Like I said, Omenani involves a bunch of laws that there are things that are sacrosanct. There are things that are abomination that as an Igbo man, as an Igbo woman, you are not supposed to do them. And if you do them, these abominations, they need to be cleansed. So number one with returning to Omenani is to understand that Omenani is not just a bunch of code. There are laws. These are laws. And unfortunately, our generation seems to forget that these are laws. In the past generation, I saw with my own eyes how some people went through great discomfort to keep these laws. We must not forget that these are laws, and these are laws created by our God. The number one law is idols. Igbos don't worship idols. I need to say this clearly. Igbos don't worship idols. Alosi, anyade for Alosi na Igbo. Alosi is not part of Igbo tradition. You need to understand this. Anything that is Alosi, the problem is that most people do not know the difference between Alosi, Ajana, maybe the water spirit and other. They don't know the difference. But there is a difference between those things. Ajana is not an Alosi. And I will do a video on Ajana in the future. Okay? Now, Alosi, abomination, and Igbos don't worship that. Let's look at what Brother Olaudah Ekwono. Now, Olaudah Ekwono, even though he was a child when he left Igbo land, he lived 400 years ago. So he gave us an idea of what our communities were doing 400 years ago. And I'm not talking about what they were doing 50 years ago or 60 years ago. That's 400 years ago. Look at what he wrote in his book. He said, as to religion, the natives believe that there is one creator. So Igbos, we are originally monotheistic. We are not polytheistic originally. We don't worship multiple gods. So, unlike most times, we go and read about our history from Europeans, and so they present nonsense. They just write nonsense. But Igbos originally, we believe in one God, and that is it. We believe that there is one creator of all things, and that he lives in the sun, and is girded around with a belt that he may never eat or drink. But according to some, he smokes a pipe, which is, of course, a joke, which is our favorite luxury. They believe he governs events, especially our deaths or captivity. This is exactly the same belief they have in the Old Testament. That's why I keep saying, if you read the Old Testament, you see both tradition right there. This is exactly the same belief in the Most High that our people had in the Old Testament. But as for the doctrine of eternity, I do not remember to have ever heard of it. Of course, the eternity doctrine is just a joke. Anyway, we'll discuss that later. So this is what Olaudah wrote. Alosi, we do not worship Alosi in Igbo land. We worship one God. The name of that God is Chukwu Okike Abiama, which in the English people call God of Abraham. That is who we worship, Chukwu Abiama. I did a video in one of my very first videos. I did a video in which I showed that Abiama means Abraham. It's the same thing. You can go and look at that. You can go and look at that video. I did a video to show that Abiama means Abraham. So that means God of Abraham means Chukwu Abiama. That's the name of the God we worship in Igbo land. We do not worship idols. Idols means the Igbo word for idols is alosi. If you translate alosi to English, it means abomination. Abomination speaks, which is the exact same thing the Bible calls idols. If you go to, let's see it in the Bible. Let's go to the book of 2 Kings chapter 23, for example. 2 Kings chapter 23, in verse 13, it says, the king, it was talking about King Solomon, which is King Jedediah. It said, the king also desecrated the high places east of Jerusalem to the south of the Mount of Corruption, which King Solomon of Israel had built for Ashtaroth, the abomination of the Sidonians, for Chemosh, the abomination of the Moabites, and for Moloch, the abomination of the Ammonites. You see, the Bible calls idols abomination. That's what the Bible calls it. It doesn't call them idols or small power or capital small letter G or gods or something. No, abomination. The exact same word we call them in Igbo land. Alosi. Look at it here. Ashtaroth, the abomination of the Sidonians. Alos in the Sidonians. For Chemosh, the abomination of the Moabites. Alos in the Moabites. And for Moloch, the abomination of the Alos in the Ammonites. This is clearly what we don't worship these entities. As an Igbo man, you are supposed to worship Chukwu Okike Abiama. You are not supposed to worship idols. And let me warn you here, Jesus is an idol. Jesus, in fact, if I was writing this 2 Kings chapter 23, I'll write, and Jesus, the abomination of the Romans. It's an idol. That's an idol. That's what you are worshiping. You are not supposed to worship idol. Whether it was brought by the Ammonites or it was brought by the Romans, you are not supposed to worship a God that your fathers did not know. You're not supposed to abandon the God of your fathers. The Bible said it very clearly. Those of you Igbos that are saying we are going to church because our fathers worship idols, no, your fathers did not worship idols. And if you read the Bible, it says on countless occasions. For instance, in the book of 1 Chronicles chapter 28, it says, do not forget the God of your fathers. Okay, if you read the book of Exodus chapter 4, Exodus chapter 3, Genesis chapter 32, Psalm 14, Psalm 114, it talks about the God of your fathers. It It talks about the God of your fathers. It did not say the God of the people that will come and of the fathers of the people that will come and preach to you. No, it didn't say the God of the people of the fathers of the people you will meet in the 1800s. No, it said the God of your own fathers. How many fathers do you have? The God of your fathers. Look, your ancestors did not worship Alushi. Some of your ancestors may have worshipped Alushi. Some of your ancestors may have consulted Alushi. But the God of the Igbos is not Alushi. The Igbos did not worship Alushi. That is what you can't take it from me alone. I mean, look at all that who lived 400 years ago saying the same thing. We didn't worship Alusi. You cannot call something you worship an abomination. Abomination is not a good name. It's not a good name. So the Bible made it very clear that we should not stray from the ways of our fathers. It doesn't matter. Whatever our fathers did, the God our fathers worship, we should worship that God. Not the gods of people who are coming to come and preach to us, or the gods of our friends' fathers. No. Our fathers. That's what the Bible said. Okay?